Minister was the original title for a clergyman of the Protestant religions. If you scour the available dictionaries now, that etymology is all but lost. Protestantism evolved out of what we call the European Enlightenment and commenced with the Geneva Bible and the King James Bible. Both of these Bibles went back to the original Hebrew for their creation. The Vatican favored Latin for all of its sacred texts, and when Gutenberg invented his printing press and the idea to make a Bible for the whole world came about, the Vatican was in no mood to share their language technology. After all, it was an economy that had allowed them to rule for more than a millennia. Why lift the patent and make the technology generic? This commenced the great European wars, which culminated in the battle between the British Navy and the Spanish Armada, in which, miracle of miracles, the British were able to best the Spanish, which, at the time, was almost inconceivable. Spain had become the war center for the Vatican. The Spanish exercised that power all through the Inquisition and the witch burnings and all the other mayhem that attended the rule of the Vatican. Now, in our modern time, we look back at that as complete lunacy, a dark age in the history of man, but as you'll find in the body of this book, witchcraft is real, commiseration with demonic and diabolical forces to the detriment of man is real, and these forces need to be combated. I can't say which side the Vatican was on. I suspect that it was something that straddled the middle. Part of the Inquisition was a legitimate crusade against the spread of witchcraft, with its attendant child sacrifice and human sacrifice, and part of it was just the maintenance of control and power over Europe, which was the desire of the Vatican. And it wasn't just Europe. The Vatican wanted the whole world under its rule. They wrote the Doctrine of Discovery to rationalize the usurping of the lands of the American continent from the native peoples, and they only repudiated it in the year of this writing, 2023. The Protestant forces, which came and consolidated themselves in England with the Bank of England in 1694, and from this fiat note system, an old Babylonian magic, came the massive expansion of the British Empire as a kind of Protestant Vatican, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Along with the emancipation of countries from the grip of the Vatican came the emancipation of the Jews. European Jews were held to limited capacity in Vatican-controlled countries. They were not allowed to hold public office, and they were not allowed to occupy positions that required the license or authority of the church state. All that came to an end with the rise of Britain. The Jew became the new man in Europe. Protestantism had its pseudo-mystics as well, like Jacob Boehm, sold to the world as a Christian mystic, but really more of Kabbalah Magi. And very quickly after this, a new economy was formed centered around prosperity and industry and expansion of empires, no different than the Vatican and in many ways even more vulgar and violent. The Enlightenment was not an emancipation from the tyranny of religious dogmas, it was a transfer of power from one dogma to another, the latter bringing with it the Kabbalah and the proliferation of European secret societies centered on religious awareness. Even the Vatican itself had to adapt. They created the Jesuit order at the behest of St. Ignatius of Loyola, a crypto-Jew, and the Jesuits became a very dark arm of the Vatican involved in the secret society game. The secret societies defined the Western economy for the centuries leading us up to this point. The 20th century, with its industrial revolution and the rapid invention of technology, created an atmosphere within the human race, at least the First World, the West, where religious and spiritual values got put aside. We put our faith in science as the discoverer of all things and that which would finally reveal the purpose of human life. In doing this, we put aside all of our old imaginative structures and imaginative bridges that had connected us to other worlds, and we stayed firmly within this rational, black box scientific reality. We scoffed at the idea of demonic possession and put our faith in psychiatry, yet, throughout this, one religious ideal has maintained itself, presenting itself as a social justice ideal, and that is the reconstruction of the Third Temple of Solomon, which is now the site of the second holiest mosque in the Islamic world. Some 3.5 billion people on this planet are tied up in the Abrahamic religions. The Abrahamic system has 28 major prophets. The last two prophets account for 99% of the Abrahamic population, Jesus Christ and Muhammad. With the Enlightenment and the proliferation of the Geneva Bible and the King James Bible, another thing happened: European secret societies formed. Most of the material that formed the basis of these secret societies were aspects of the Kabbalah, given by the European Jewish community to Gentiles. This magical system formed the basis of, or, at the very least, profoundly influenced Freemasonry, the Martinists, the Rosicrucians, and countless others. We now find ourselves on the cusp of the Third Temple being reconstructed. The government of Benjamin Netanyahu has become more and more belligerent about this goal. It was largely due to the secret society members and government and intelligence organizations like MI6 and the CIA, which aided the Jews in getting this far in their goal of creating the Third Temple. The temple plays a curious role in the lives of Jews because it was constructed by a king who never claimed prophet status and was never awarded prophet status in the Jewish religious system. Solomon was and always has been a socio-political Jewish figure, not a prophetic Jewish figure. However, he brings with him the magical system given to him or perfected by him through his association with all of the magical systems that existed at his time, which, if you examine the artifacts of these cultures through the lens of popular writers.
And there you go. Welcome, folks. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It's 10:30 p.m. on the 13th of June. I'm a little busy these days. Like work busy, I have to work like everybody else, right? I have a desk job. This is in fact one of my desks. I actually have 3 desks, 3 different office rooms on the 4 if I set up the little bodega, but it's nice. I'm going to start today with, a little bit about my life up here and how magical and how beautiful it is. When I lived in different places, and I've lived in a number of different places, I've lived just outside of Taipei, Taiwan, a mega city. Even in 1992, it was a mega city of like 8 million people. Very, very dense city, the kind of density only Asians can do. I've been to Hong Kong about 6 times. Been to Thailand just once for 3 days, and I didn't really get much further than Khao Sun Road, which is where all the tourists are. Wacky place, like I found Thailand to be a very wacky place. I lived in New York for a brief spell in like 2000, 2001. Interesting energy. I spent most of my life in Toronto. And I grew up in the capital of Canada, which is Ottawa. And when I lived in all of these places, I went out a lot. I would just really enjoy getting out of the house. So I went out a lot. I would go to places like movie theaters, restaurants, coffee shops, various places, and always sort of moving around. And what makes this place different is the degree to which it fulfills the Taoist ethic that you've reached some kind of a contentment when you don't really want to leave your home that much. And it's just something about this place. I can't quite lay words to it. It's the most grounded place I've ever been. It is the most conducive to spiritual practice. It's almost like a monastery. It's the best diet I've ever had in terms of the purity of the food, the cleanliness of the food. Let me just turn my mic down here a little bit. I see it spiking. So it's just phenomenal in every way. It's probably the highest level of consciousness I've ever been able to live at and sustain. And that is in large measure due to the hours of work I do at these practices, mainly meditation. And yeah, it's just a phenomenal place. And um, best relationship I've ever had in my life, the one I have with my wife now. This was sort of an ordained relationship. We've both had dreams that sort of clarify the role we play in each other's lives. Mine was super weird, but yeah, extremely productive up here. And it's all stuff that comes from my heart, you know. I get people who, talk to me and say things like, well, if you did this, 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 and this, you could get a lot more listeners. But if I did that, that, and that, it wouldn't be coming from my heart, and I'm not sure I'd even want those listeners, to be honest. Why would I want them? You know, this is for people who get me, and it's not for big numbers. Um, it's just to communicate, you know. Think of maybe people tapping on the bars or figuring out some form of Morse code in a solitary confinement wing of a prison. I do this for the necessity to communicate and the necessity to explain further the books that I write. So why not? You know? I am looking forward to getting a tourism business going. I've just been dragging my heels about this. I mean, there's just a few more projects left to do. A wooden balcony around the pool in the back. Yeah, I have an earth bag pool here. Nice little Roman pool. Um, I have to get a wood burning stove to boil hot water for the bathing room. Um, and I have to get some means of heating the sauna. And that's it. And then and I have to build a shower and one more bathroom up at the front here. And then that's pretty much it. Like I'm done this project. And it's been a remarkable project, doing this project and building an earth bag house in the rainforest, and just an absolutely magical experience. And one of the reasons I can see the world that you live in so clearly is because of the perspective I get from this mountain, this home I've made in the wilderness. Everything is so clear up here. It's just everything is transparent. I can just see right through things. And when you're busy and you're meeting the demands of living in your society, it's more difficult to catch these things, you know? It's just more difficult. So, the event horizon is what we're in now. And it's going to be a massive awakening for some people, and it's going to be a destruction for other people, physical destruction. And tonight I wanted to go over a few things and show you a few things and just sort of, make the case about what I've been saying about consciousness. How the consciousness field around us, no matter what form it comes in, a book, a movie, a television show, the news, and the physical unfolding of your reality, no matter what shape it takes, it all has something to tell you. And it's our responsibility to determine what it is that we're being told. So let me give you a few examples. So, they rebooted the Planet of the Apes franchise. I think they started it in 2011 or 2012 with James Franco. And Brian Cox as well plays an excellent role as the guy at the ape shelter, the father. I love Brian Cox. He's just this actor. He's the father in Succession, if you watch that TV show. But he's been around for a number of decades. He actually played Hannibal Lecter before Anthony Hopkins did Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. Brian Cox played the role in a movie called Manhunter from the 80s. It was a Michael Mann film. Michael Mann is the guy that brought us Collateral, Last of the Mohicans, Collateral with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx, Last of the Mohicans with Daniel Day-Lewis, a number of films. He started out as a TV guy. He did Miami Vice in the 80s with Don Johnson and the other actor. And yeah, Brian Cox is a phenomenal actor. But so they did the first one, and if you haven't seen the movie, that's okay. And then they did the reboot, or the second one. And my wife and I, we watched the first one last night. And tonight we watched the second one in the sequel. And my wife really enjoys them. I mean, they're very well done films. My wife can't see anything bloody in a movie. You can't sit down and watch Goodfellas or Casino or anything with blood in it. Mind you, she can kill 25 chickens in a day. You know, it never ceases to amaze me how she can do it in real life, but she can't watch it on the TV screen. Or yeah, we got ourselves a nice big TV here. I'm not going to pretend that I live beyond television and film. I kind of enjoy it quite a bit. My excuse is I'm a writer and I'm just sort of studying these things. So I'm going to play this first clip now, and I want you to pay particular attention to what's going on here and what's being said. So this is the opening to the second Planet of the Apes movie. And another interesting thing is, I think his name is Anthony Serkis, or he also played Golem. He gets all of these very unusual roles where it's non-human. It's Golem, it's Caesar in Planet of the Apes. But just watch the beginning of this and I'll tell you what I made of it.
If you have fever and cough or sore throat, stay home.
I'd say 95% chance this was manufactured, came out of a laboratory.
The source of the virus was traced back to drug testing done at Genesis Laboratories in San Francisco.
A lab technician, now known as Patient Zero, was accidentally exposed to retrovirus ALZ-113, an Alzheimer's trial drug that was being tested on chimpanzees.
The infected chimps showed signs of erratic and aggressive behavior that led to their escape from the facility.
The now famous incident on the Golden Gate Bridge, a 6-hour standoff with police, ended with the apes disappearing into Muir Woods.
Emergency rooms are being overwhelmed with patients showing signs of what's being dubbed the simian flu.
The CDC is projecting a fatality toll ranging from 5 million to as many as 150 million in the next 6 to 8 months.
Anyone showing signs of a contagious illness will receive special treatment here, the airport's purpose-built quarantine center.
Many of the new arrivals are children who have lost contact with their parents.
The mandatory quarantines have sparked civil unrest. Families are being ripped apart.
Containment is is not very likely.
Prepare your families, know your evacuation route.
The survival rate is now approximately 1 in 500.
Violence erupted in the city center tonight, the third incident in as many days.
Martial law has been declared in 28 nations, including the U.S. and Canada.
Reactor's overheating. We can't stop a meltdown.
Our generator lost its power.
The collapse of anything resembling civilian order.
Due to the extremity of the simian flu crisis, all regular government functions have been suspended indefinitely.
Those who aren't killed by the virus will probably die in the fighting. So maybe this is it. This is how it ends. Pretty soon, there won't be anyone left.
Now, don't you find it a little bit strange that that movie comes out in 2015 and then in 2020 we get the very similar situation in real life, including the connection between the man-made disease, which is now the focus of inquiries going on with Anthony Fauci. Curiously, they're not going on at the World Health Organization, though. So at the globalist level, nobody is contesting this. At the national level, it's a major issue in the United States right now. So you have this man-made disease. In the movie, it's the simian flu, which is created by the drugs that they're working on in the first Planet of the Apes movie, which were created to maybe cure Alzheimer's was the sort of benign intent of it. And they were testing on apes, and they ended up increasing the intelligence in the apes. So it's really fascinating, and none of this was covered in the original movies with Charlton Heston in the 60s and stuff. So yeah, and you've got, chaos and economies collapsing and a massive rollback. And I can't help but notice how similar that is to what's going on in real life now. Now, before you get all worked up in terms of a conspiracy mindset, it's necessary to understand that very often creative minds, artistic minds, can sort of pluck this stuff out from the ether, because it's sort of sitting there, in a sense, on the event timeline, on the astral, as a potentiality, okay? It's just sitting there. There's a number of potentialities just sitting above us at all times, like a dam waiting to break. And there have been a number of writer-directors who've been able to have an uncanny predictive ability about what might be coming in the future. Planet of the Apes was definitely one of them. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, And it's just uncanny how, even in the clip you can see people being forced into quarantine. We were forced into lockdown. You can see the people wearing the masks. But it's very interesting that this enters the public consciousness as a fully formed idea in 2 dimensions on a cinema screen, basically preparing people, okay, for what is to come. Now, if you're a person who pays attention to the inner life, your inner life, if you meditate, if you spend time in stillness, if you lucid dream, if you remote view, if you do any of these things, and they're all really sort of the same sort of milieu of things, you come to a much better understanding of the hologram we live in and how circumstances unfold in the timeline. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I've made mention of it numerous times in passing in this podcast, the Talamanca Review, and tonight I'm spending a little bit more time and focusing in on it and really showing you some very, very concrete examples of it. So, number one, we are manifestors. This is a common idea that's out there now. It is explained in a very inconsiderate way in the New Age, because it's presented really kind of within the Protestant Jewish prosperity doctrine. Like you can manifest your abundance. And which I think is really bad, to mix materialism and manifestation. I think it's a corruption of the creative ability. And also I believe that the wealth produced by or represented as money in a society disproportionately goes to the people who just catch it in transit through derivatives and trading and things like this, but don't actually do any work. And I consider that one of the great tragedies of modern capitalism. Although I don't believe in tragedy, I call it spiritual pornography. You know, I'm so strict about these things that I've never borrowed money in my life, never gone to a bank to borrow money, never had a house mortgage, never had a credit card, although the modern ATM cards operate the same as a credit card, except you're not borrowing money, you're just using money that's already in your account. So manifestation is something that we understand. And this is why you have to be very careful about what you take in. Okay? So using the example of Planet of the Apes, the clip I played, and what I have said about it, I want you to refocus on the book now. And this is the 6th chapter I've gone over in the body of the book. And this is Event Horizon Part 4. And I want you to think about it, and I want you to think about all of the ideas that have been placed into our consciousness. Okay? The repatriation of the Jews, what they call their repatriation to their homeland in 1947, even though they're not really the same people, and it's almost 2,000 years since they were removed from that homeland, if you peg it at 72 AD, when Rome destroyed the Temple of Solomon. Have you ever stopped to consider? Well, I gotta stop breaking my thoughts here, because I gotta finish what I was saying. You get the UFOs coming into the consciousness stream, and I mean, that's got to take up a significant amount of, podcast and YouTube bandwidth now. Everybody talks about it now. Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, the Concrete podcast with Danny Jones. Everybody is talking about it now. UFOs, 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 or UAPs as they call it now. We have very strategically had information leak out or come out in congressional hearings. And given that everything that the U.S. government does now is negative, meaning it's nothing good for the people are suffering. Nobody is stopping the border invasion at the south. Nobody is stopping the decay of the cities, even though it could be stopped. I mean, this was proved when Xi Jinping visited California and Gavin Newsom cleaned up San Francisco for the 3 days Xi Jinping and his party were there in San Francisco. That should tell you something, that the leader of what is ostensibly the most powerful country in the world now, China, visits the United States to speak to a state governor and does not, in the same trip, go to Washington to see Joe Biden. That should... If you understand politics, if you understand anything about how this world works, you could get more out of that one little nugget of information than you could out of 3 months of reading the New York Times front section every day, including weekends. There's so much being said there. Okay? So the government and the Congress is not doing anything for you. They're not repatriating any of the industries that have been displaced by the multinational corporations. You know, Apple isn't repatriating Apple manufacturing back to the United States. None of the big computer companies are. They want access to the market to sell you those computers, but they also want access to the cheaper labor in the Asian market. Same thing with auto manufacturing, same thing with steel production. If your government was really working for you, they would be bringing industry back to the United States just as a civil defense plan. Because you are so reliant as a nation now on outside production, it's a level of vulnerability I don't think any other country in the world has right now, except those countries that have followed suit, which would be Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand, basically the Five Eyes countries. But my point in bringing this up is that your Congress, your House of Representatives, is not doing anything for you. Nothing good, nothing constructive. Therefore, if you understand that simple truth, you then have the right frame of mind to ask yourself, why the UAP theater? Why David Groesch, or whatever his name is? Why all of this alien theater? Because it's a distraction. That's why. And the more distracted you are, the less likely you are to pick up on what's really going on in the world. Okay? That's why they do it. All right, let's take a look at another one, okay? This is from another incredible predictor. This is, of course, Christopher Nolan and Batman.
Smiling. It's not a joke. Please leave. The party's over. Get out.
The apple has fallen very far from the tree, Mr. Wayne.
Amusing, but pointless. None of these people have long to live. Your antics at the asylum have forced my hand.
So Crane was working for you.
His toxin is derived from the organic compound found in our blue flowers. He was able to weaponize it.
He's not a member of the League of Shadows.
Of course not. He thought our plan was to hold the city to ransom.
But really, you are going to release Crane's poison on the entire city.
Then watch Gotham tear itself apart through fear.
You're going to destroy millions of lives.
Only a cynical man would call what these people have lives, Wayne. Crime, despair. This is not how man was supposed to live. The League of Shadows has been a check against human corruption for thousands of years. We sacked Rome, loaded trade ships with plague rats, burned London to the ground. Every time a civilization reaches the pinnacle of its decadence, we return to restore the balance.
Gotham isn't beyond saving. Give me more time. There are good people here.
You are defending a city so corrupt we have infiltrated every level of its infrastructure.
Time to play.
When I found you in that jail, you were lost. But I believed in you. I took away your fear, and I showed you a path. You are my greatest student. It should be you standing by my side, saving the world.
I'll be standing where I belong. Between you and the people of Gotham.
No one can save Gotham. When a forest grows too wild, a purging fire is inevitable and natural. Tomorrow the world will watch in horror as its greatest city destroys itself. The movement back to harmony will be unstoppable this time.
You attacked Gotham before.
Of course. Over the ages, our weapons have grown more sophisticated. With Gotham, we tried a new one, economics. But we underestimated certain of Gotham's citizens, such as your parents. Gunned down by one of the very people they were trying to help. Create enough hunger and everyone becomes a criminal. Their deaths galvanized the city into saving itself, and Gotham has limped on ever since. We are back to finish the job. And this time, no misguided idealists will get in the way. Like your father, you lack the courage to do all that is necessary. If someone stands in the way of true justice, you simply walk up behind them and stab them in the heart.
I am gonna stop you.
You never did learn to mind your surroundings. Justice is balance. You burned my house and left me for dead. Consider us even.
Now, that, of course, is Batman Begins, which I believe came out in 2012, I think. Although I could be wrong. But again, it's uncanny how many things in this piece of fiction are actually true. Okay, but you have to understand what I mean when I say true. I mean conceptually, energetically, you're being told the truth. Number one, there is an organized force that is in the shadows, okay, in this particular example, actually called the League of Shadows. Number two, they've been around for millennia. Okay, been around for millennia. The reference to sacking Rome. Okay, sacking Rome is the ambition of the rabbis now, because the prophecies say that it will be destroyed. And Rome today is America and the inheritors of Christianity, is the extension of Rome today. And so it has to be destroyed. And as I've already told you, when the Jews say God, they mean themselves. So it is the Jewish mission to destroy Rome. Not God. It's not an act of God. An act of God is something that doesn't enter anybody's thinking and manifestation process and just happens. Okay? That's an act of God. This is not an act of God. This is a plan. You've got the reference to the narcotization of the city. And for those of you who have seen the movie, they use a narcotic derived from a flower that plays upon the fear centers in the brain and forces horrifying hallucinations. And this is a reference to the pharmakia that is everywhere now. And the word pharmakia in the original Greek means sorcery. So they're pretty much just telling you. Now, the only difference, the only narrative construct in the film that deviates from it being at a conceptual level, not at a detail level, but at a conceptual level, okay? So the destruction of the world's most affluent and envied cities, you know, New York, Los Angeles, Toronto, Chicago, London, you know, Sydney, these sorts of things, they will be destroyed. You're conceptually told that in Batman. The people will have havoc wreaked upon them through narcotics. This is happening at a conceptual or energetic level. And the reference to Rome. Okay? Now, I've often wondered where Christopher Nolan is coming from. I've seen all of his films going right back to his first independent film, which he did with his brother on a 16mm camera. And he made the whole film for like 30 or 40,000 pounds. If you've never seen it, it is absolutely worth seeing. This is some, like, you see a first film like this only once in a while. What comes to mind is Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, Billy Bob Thornton's Sling Blade, which is a masterpiece, and Following is also a masterpiece, and done with no budget, and done with people from a theater group that Christopher Nolan and his brother belonged to. No famous actors in it. But it's absolutely spellbinding, okay? And shot in black and white on 16mm film, okay? So again, we're being told through fiction what the truth is. Now, whether these artists are pulling it out of the ether, as some artists can do, or they're actually in on the plan, is debatable. Now, I favor in on the plan. And the reason I favor in on the plan is because there's so many things that have to come together for these films to get made. You need the money sign off by Hollywood. You know, yes, Chris, we'll invest $150 million in your movie. You need the distribution sign off. And these are all gatekeeper cultures. Gatekeepers are people who guard the public ear. And so the public ear is accessed through books that are published by big publishing houses, although publishing's been destroyed now, pretty much, laid waste to by social media and other things. Certainly cinema and television production is definitely a gatekeeper. Okay, you're not going to get anything. How do we know that these are gatekeepers? Well, for the reasons I've been articulating in all of my podcasts. They're still making TV shows, cable TV shows, and movies about the evil Nazis and Hitler when a depopulation agenda 50 times greater is underway right now, and the people in this world know what's going on. They're not stupid, okay? We're the stupid ones, the ones who don't catch on. They're not stupid. They're on the inside. They're being told. So you need the distribution, and whether that be cinemas or whether that be online distribution through a distributor like Hulu or Netflix or Peacock or Apple Movies, something like this, right? So they're definitely in on it. Now, the other role that these things play is negative catharsis. Okay? So, as I've explained before, catharsis is the release of built-up emotions. It's almost, I hesitate to use this analogy because I don't want to be unsavory, but it's almost like a sexual release without the sex. So, where do you get a catharsis? You can have catharsis in therapy. If you go and you talk to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you can achieve catharsis, the expunging of emotions that have so embedded in your conscious and unconscious mind that they're just swimming around there all the time and you don't know what they're doing to you. And having them taken off of you is a tremendous relief. This is a catharsis. You can experience catharsis in art. I would say that the Batman movie is a catharsis. I would say that if you were to watch Dawn of the Planet of the Apes now, it would be cathartic because a lot of the emotion that's been packed into you, the negative feelings you have about what you went through in the, what I would call the pseudo-medical emergency that went on for 3 years, the lockdowns, the mask wearing, the elderly family members dying alone because, I mean, it was really, in my opinion, a massive satanic ritual, the entire pandemic, okay? And it was gleefully executed by these sociopaths. And these are the same people that are at the G7 summit in Italy now. And what a pack of goofs. I've never seen a more pathetic leadership class in my life. You know, Sunak from the UK, Trudeau, Macron from France. Just a bunch of like super creepy people and sociopaths and psychopaths. And in many instances, either cult puppets or cult initiates. There's just no other way to say it. So the false catharsis is, so when the real realization starts to come up on you, like, hey, this guy I watch on YouTube is telling me that they're deliberately collapsing Western society, your friends may say, well, he probably saw the Batman movies and his imagination is getting a little carried away. Because they took the false catharsis. The false catharsis is the expunging of those emotions, which in this case would be useful to you for your survival. But they're taken out of you by the media event, by the Batman movie, by Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Okay? Now you may think what I'm saying is far-fetched, but it isn't. Okay? Remember what I've told you. That this, if there's one thing that this cult is, they're masters of what I would call metapsychology, and specifically mass psychology, how group psychology works, societal psychology works, and how to manipulate it. They're masters at it. Okay? So there's no doubt in my mind that these films are part of it, right? They're absolutely part of it. Now let's watch one more, okay? And this one you'll recognize right away. It's The Avengers.
Right. Army.
Loki! Turn off the Tesseract or I'll destroy it.
You can't. There is no stopping it. There is only the war.
So be it.
Starborn, 3 headed northeast.
What, did you stop for drive-through? Swing up park. I'm gonna lay him out for you.
Sir, we have more incoming.
Fine. Let's keep him occupied.
See him?
There you go. The third and last example I have to show you tonight. So what do you notice there? Well, you notice a portal opening up and you notice an alien invasion. Portals are real. Aliens coming through them are real. They're not necessarily visible to the naked eye, though. That's the only thing that I would take away from it. Now, in each of the 3 examples that I've given you, the only thing that is purely fiction and not part of the disclosure is the protagonist. So in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the protagonist is Caesar, the original ape that was genetically modified and became intelligent, and the central character of the movie franchise. Again, brilliantly played by the same guy who played Gollum in The Lord of the Rings. In the Batman Begins movie, everything is pretty much true. The destruction of Western civilization, for reasons that it's decadent. I don't think that's it. We are decadent societies now, but I don't think that's why they're destroying them per se. But the artifice or complete fiction of it is the Batman himself. In our real world scenario, there's no Batman. In our real world scenario, there's no Caesar, the intelligent ape, who has compassion. Okay? There's just the disease, there's just the lockdowns, there's just the mass death, and again, there's the destruction of society. In Batman Begins, the artifice is Batman himself. Okay? And in the Avengers, the artifice is the Avengers. Okay? So that's the fiction. The fiction is that there's some protagonist, some force on the light side working on your behalf. In each of these instances, whether it be the disease and the lockdowns in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the destruction of Gotham in Batman Begins, or the portal opening and the alien invasion in the Avengers, in each of these instances, we are supposed to be the protagonists, but the energy, the emotional energy we need to respond to this is taken out of us prematurely by this trick of the two-dimensional catharsis in cinema, the false catharsis. So a false catharsis is like, I can only think of sexual examples for some reason, and I don't want to use them, but it would be like you masturbate and then you don't have energy to make love to your wife or your husband, okay? You did it yourself, right? So now you couple that with the proliferation of people getting high, and there's tremendous medical benefits to marijuana. I use it a couple times a year in a oil form, distilled from a plant. I distill an oil, and I eat a little bit of it every day, and then I fast for 2 weeks, and so my intestines get cleaned out, and then my blood, my joints, and all the negative debris in my body gets washed out by the THC oil. The Rick Simpson tears is what it's called. Very beneficial. I mean, you're high for 2 weeks, but it does have tremendous medicinal benefit. But what I'm referring to here is like people just can't cope. They shut down, and they're just hitting the bong every day or smoking the weed every day because the reality is so daunting. The reality is so negative and disturbing that they simply cannot cope with it. So they don't. Okay? It's a little bit depressing, you know. Everything that's going on is a little bit depressing. And everything in those three movie clips is going on in a literal form. It's actually going on in a literal form. Okay? So, in our real world scenario, the pseudo-protagonist, because the protagonist himself, according to their own scripted play, which is their prophecies, the protagonist will be a false catharsis as well. This will be the Antichrist. I can shut the portal. I can turn the disease around. You know, I can stop Gotham from being sacked and destroyed and the people killing each other, crazy on a hallucinogenic pharmaceutical. I can protect you from all of that stuff. That's the protagonist in real life. Well, or the pseudo-protagonist, because it's not a protagonist. Okay? This is all theater being done by people much more clever than us. But you know what? We can be more clever than them if we attune ourselves to our spiritual lives. Because we get assistance from the Creator. They're cut off from the Creator. So all they've got are the ghouls and goblins on the other side that give them a little bit of prescience, a little bit of foreshadowing, a little bit of insider information. And they do have that, by the way. They use psychics a lot and stuff like that. But they don't have the grace of the Creator. Okay? And this is why God is being denigrated. And I love using the word God. You know, the moment I hear one of these New Age flakes refer to God as source, it just irritates me. And again, I've said this before on my show, but I'll repeat it. There's no affection in that term. There's no source. You know, you just see all that computer nonsense in the Matrix. Oh, source. Okay? Not the way I want to roll. So, this has been Event Horizon Part 4, and there will be a Part 5. And thank you for listening. I'm Bruce McDonald. This has been the Talamanca Review.